Caoilté McClean has been on a turbulent road of recovery from his drug addictions. Through his healing journey, he has documented his incredible insights and lessons on social media, which has touched the hearts and minds of over 500,000 people. Caoilté, an absolute pleasure to have you here on the Modern Warrior
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, unreal, man. And you are someone who has absolutely blown up on social media in recent times.
Indeed, yeah.
Incredible.
Very grateful for it.
Unreal,
Very
man.
grateful, yeah.
And we see this man in the forest with a microphone on a stick.
Yeah.
And someone who I feel is speaking straight from the heart.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think it is having an incredible impact on the people in the world at the moment that are potentially going through difficult times or hardships.
Hopefully so, yeah. Hopefully so.
Where does that wisdom, that knowledge and that incredible insight come from in your own experience?
Well, I think it's come from a few places in my life, to be honest. I've always had nature as a part of my life. I've grown up in the countryside and, you know, my mother always brought me into nature and I was always a part of my life. But I suppose throughout my teenage years and my early 20s, I strayed away from it. And I suppose I ventured more into cities and maybe some of the more nefarious things that going into a city may come along with. Falling in with, you know, maybe unpleasant people and calling people my friends that I probably shouldn't have, and probably ended up domino effect into living an unpleasant life and doing things that now I'm probably not very proud of. You know, I've had real addiction problems. I've been addicted to most things you can think of off the top of your head. And, you know, I have anxiety and depression, which probably pushed me further down that road. And then I had a run-in with the guards and I decided to clean up my entire life. Changed everything. That was going on about 5 years ago now. I've been completely sober for all of that. I used to drink and smoke, and as I said, used to be addicted to a lot of different things. Completely cleaned up my life, and the perspective that I gained over that time of healing and having nature as a part of my life anyway, and kind of going back to it when I decided to change who I was, gave me a perspective I thought helped me, and it seemed to help a few of my friends when I reached out to them. And I thought maybe I could help somebody else that was in my position that could really do with hearing it 5 years ago. Because if I'd heard it then, maybe I'd have changed quicker. So I was trying to be a voice in the dark for somebody who needs it, you know?
So you're potentially speaking to yourself 5 years ago?
Oh, definitely. I think all of the videos I've made are things that I wanted to hear somebody say to me back then, or I think would have been beneficial. It's definitely where I get my motivation to do it, is I sort of think of what would I needed to have heard back then, and I try and put that out there into the world now, you know?
What are some of those things?
A lot of them being, I have a huge gripe with the push for people to need a certain level of status in the world, which is definitely something I felt. I was an insecure teenager and 20-year-old, you know what I mean? And in a massive way, out of insecurity about my finances and my life situation, pushed me into doing things that I was uncomfortable with and have had long-lasting damage on my life, because I felt that if I didn't do those things, if I couldn't afford Gucci clothes at the time, gold chain, that kind of thing, the things that my friends were into, I was told I should be into, and I pushed myself into doing things that I really wish I hadn't, because I wanted those things. And I feel like nobody at any stage turned around and went, that doesn't validate you. You know, you don't need to do those things. You don't need to be this person. I didn't have that voice, and I'd love to be that voice for somebody else, but maybe they sit back and go, there are other forms of success. You know, you don't have to, there's not just whether you do it legally, illegally, immorally or immorally. Becoming financially extremely rich is not the only form of success. There's many forms of success, and one of them just being mentally healthy, you know? So
you were possibly financially secure, but it didn't heal your insecurity?
I wouldn't say secure, but I had a fair abundance at times, you know? But it definitely ate into my mental health in a pretty aggressive way, you know, that I guess I realised it at the time, but I realised it more after as well.
Was it the sort of, I need more?
I need more, and also, you know, when, you know, without saying too much, when you're in certain circles, you're in certain worlds, the people you're around, there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of masculinity, toxic masculinity. There's a lot of people going, if you don't do this, you're not a man. If you don't have this, you know, you're this, that, and the other. And you, even your own friends, in a nice way, even when they're not trying to be rude or aggressive or push you into stuff, they'll say things like, oh, you know, you're cool because of this. We like you because of this. You're such a man. We respect you because of this. And then in your head, as a guy that's maybe finding himself, you hear that and go, if I don't carry on doing these things, I'm going to lose these friends, which I did, but it turned out to be the right thing. I'm glad I lost those friends. But also I will say, I don't want to say that it's just a male experience either. I think this is for everybody. I'm just speaking from my own experience, like, you know. Yeah.
As you look back at, you know, those teenage years and into your early 20s, what do you feel were some of the influences from the past that drove you that direction?
That drove me away from it.
Drove you into that dark place, so to speak, or drove you towards the direction of trying to find something to make you feel like you were more than you are?
Honestly, it sounds like such a thing, but social media. It really does. Do you know what I mean? And then social media in roundabout ways, as in social media, even if it's not affecting you, it's affecting your friend group, and your friend group are affecting you. Do you know? And even just the things that we look up to, it seems to be that there's a subversive advertisement in the world. You know, there's adverts that are, this brand is great, buy this brand. But then there's also adverts that kind of get into society and say, if you want to be this kind of person, you have to own these kind of things. And it's not an obvious ad. It's just a sort of insidious thing that comes into your life that you're not aware of. And until you kind of realize that's happening, you feel like you need these things to be that person. And these things require usually a lot of money. And to get that money, you either have to do really well in school and college and get a great job, which at the time I was at was no longer possible, or do some other stuff. Do you know what I mean? And you end up down a slightly darker road, for sure.
And during those schooling years for you, what was that like?
For school?
Yeah.
I was in school I was homeschooled up until 14. And then I was in a school, an agricultural kind of, you know, small town in Ireland kind of school. And then I went to a youth reach for my leaving cert, which I never actually got. I got a junior cert and then I never actually got my leaving in a youth reach out in rural Limerick, which was a beautiful experience, wild experience, to be honest. Youth reaches are something else, but shout out youth reaches, to be honest. Yeah,
great crack.
Yeah,
highly recommend it. Yeah.
Highly recommend it if you are not taking your life super seriously. If you want to go into a trade and you want to smoke joints for the rest of your life, best time of your life.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it's
until it doesn't become the best time of your life.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it'd be the best time of your early 20s.
Yeah.
Look out for 30. It's coming. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then, so again, you're on this trajectory of destruction ultimately until you get arrested.
Yeah. Well, I actually wasn't arrested, funnily enough. I was in a house that got raided, and then I ended up getting questioned, and there was a court case. But I actually wasn't officially arrested. I was questioned and that sort of thing, and then they were trying to say that this was mine and that was mine, all things are mine. Turned out that it wasn't, and it was okay. It turned out to be a situation where I was around the wrong people, got into a bad situation, but I, in that scenario, wasn't actually in a bad situation. There was just a few court cases, that sort of thing. Charges got dropped eventually, but I took it as a bit of a scare and a wake-up call and went, that could have gone differently. So,
on reflection, did you have previous wake-up calls that you ignored before that happened?
Definitely, but not with the law, as it were. Definitely wake-up calls with times when people that I was like, oh, these are my friends, I'm like them, we're a group together, and then I would see them do stuff and I'd go, is that really who I want to be? Do you know what I mean? Sometimes there'd be a line where I'm comfortable with, somebody would push that boundary, I'd kind of see it, and then I know the onus is on me to push the boundary further, and I would just be made aware that I should probably back off. Didn't, but in retrospect, there was definitely a series of wake-up calls where I kind of went, something probably got to stop, but didn't take those wake-up calls. Now, honestly, do you know, I make it sound so extreme. It's honestly just hanging around with the wrong people. It can just be a really aggressive time in your life, even if the things that are happening aren't aggressively violent or really illegal. It's just, you feel unsafe and it gets into your mind and you feel insecure and you keep going and you end up doing real damage to your own mental health. For sure.
So we see this guy now who's in the forest and seems a lot more at peace with himself.
Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah.
Not that long ago, you were sleeping pretty rough in flats and had a very chaotic life. But
extremely chaotic. Yeah. I suppose in a big way, I heard a saying the other day that it took great violence to know such peace. I suppose that's probably pretty accurate. I probably never would be where I am now if it wasn't for the rebound effect from where I was. So I'm grateful. Do you know what I mean? I don't regret anything. I'm genuinely grateful. There's just certain things that when people have conversations with me, I wince when I have to say it. Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't regret it, but it's not my greatest memory either.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which again signifies your growth and progress, that you can look back at yourself and cringe a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
you're not that person anymore.
Because there's definitely a time when you stop where you look back and you're still proud of it. Just in your head, you still go, well, that's who I was. And you're afraid to let it go because you feel, I felt like I peaked. I was like, that's my identity. That's who I am. I don't have anything else. If I leave that behind, you lose all your friends. Nobody cares about you. Nobody has any respect for you anymore. Nobody gives a shit. They're just, he's just your man who was, you know? And then it's a hard thing to let go of. But honestly, that is just a resistance that you have to go through. And on the other side is amazing and so much better than it was, you know? It's definitely an illusion, but it's definitely a resistance you feel, I think.
The letting go part is usually the hardest part.
For sure, yeah. Once you've let it go, it's great.
Yeah. And you've had to let go of a lot of friends then over the years?
Almost everybody. I would have been, I'm not going to say I was very popular, but I definitely knew a lot of people. Do you know, I had a lot of acquaintances that I would have considered friends. You know, I always had somebody to talk to. I always had somebody to be around. I always had somebody to spend time with. I was very rarely on my own. And, you know, people would text me, do you want to come and hang out? Do you want to go and do something? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And then when I sort of, you know, changed my life and lost grip on that side of everything, I didn't get those texts anymore. Do you know? People were like, you know, even the people that sort of attempted to hang on, they go, would you want to go for a drink? And I go, I don't drink anymore. And they go, would you want to go for a smoke? Then I go, I don't smoke anymore. And I go, well, I'm never going to speak to you again then. And that's kind of the way that goes, yeah. Do you know? And yeah, I lost all of my friends. Like I went for a few years with I have 2 or 3 really, really close mates that had nothing to do with that. I knew them from before and I still know them now. And they were the only people that were around me. Now I have other friends, but you know, it's...
Did that sting
different.
or was that like
a
realization of...
Oh, it stung for sure. Yeah. Now I'm really grateful because if those people had stayed around me, they'd have done horrific damage in my life and I wouldn't have been able to move on the way that I have. But at the time, it was definitely a real sting because people that I thought, you know, that's one of my best mates, you know, be with me for the rest of my life probably. And then, you know, you essentially fall off to them. And then they completely disappear and you go, what happened there? Do you know what I mean? It definitely gets to your ego and definitely, yeah, it speaks to the insecurity that made me start. It definitely brings that insecurity back. And I think it would be an easy thing to fall back out of the fear of turning into who you were before. For sure, yeah.
Have any of them attempted to reach out now that you've sort of gained popularity in a different sense than they've potentially seen some of your content, your videos and... Yeah.
I get a mixture. I get a lot of people reaching out in I would consider kind of a selfish way. Do you know what I mean? People that had absolutely nothing to do with me and couldn't give a shit. Some see my Instagram and go, oh, he's a few followers. Let's give him a text. And then I'll inevitably get, oh, I'm starting a band. Would you share it on your story? That kind of thing. I get a lot of that.
This is from people from the past?
Yeah, people from the past.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
people that I would have known in school, things like that, or just friends I had that definitely just had no interest in me beforehand. They had an interest, maybe a small peak. They went, oh, he's somebody then. And then they went, oh, he's nobody again. But as soon as you get anything that happens in your life and they feel like they have an in where they could ride something that you have, they will immediately try and get in. And also, I get a lot of, which is really strange to me because I don't feel like I'm considerably famous. I have a bit of a following, but I wouldn't say that I'm, anything to, you're not going to ask for an autograph. Do you know what I mean? But I definitely get people being like, oh, I know him. And I'm like, we spoke once. And you were kind of a dick then. Do you know?
Yeah.
But I definitely get texts being a little negative. I see a lot of that. People from my past don't like that I changed. They haven't changed. And they hate that I have. And I get a lot of really negative, abusive texts from them going, people don't know the real you. I remember who you were. You're a piece of shit. And I kind of go, look, I'm not hiding that at all. I've spoken about it on my TikTok that I turned my life around. This wasn't the whole time. But they definitely have an angle of... if you were that, you can't change. You're not allowed to change. Mm-hmm. And then they get very aggressive or shitty and they try and bring up things from the past or they go, oh, I'll out you. I'll tell people who you used to be. And I go, well, I've already told them. So you're okay there. Yeah. But the attempt is to be quite nasty, do you know?
Does that challenge you?
Not at all.
No,
it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it's because it's more a projection of their internal belief that they can't change.
Yeah, and I think also in a big way, it sounds less deep, but I've just gone through a lot of changes and I've had a lot of times where I was felt bad about myself for whatever reason and I've just grown a bloody thick skin. Honestly, that's what
resiliency.
It is. Exactly. I was also a very fat, balding kid. I have a shite hairline since I was about 11. Like, honestly, it's a genetic mutation. I've had a hat on for the past 15 years, I'd say. I'll show it at some point just to be like, there's my hairline, guys. But and I was just extremely overweight and just ginger and you get bullied for that. And just, do you know what I mean? An unusual kid in school because I've been homeschooled as well. So going into normal schooling, you get bullied pretty aggressively. So I'd say even before any of this happened, I was faking it at first that I didn't care. Of course I cared. People would say things to me, I'd get upset. I was a kid, I wanted to fit in, didn't at all. And I'd get upset. But I just pretend I didn't. And the more you pretend, eventually you're not pretending anymore. You really don't give a shit. Like, you hear enough of it and you go, all right, bud. It's really hard to say something to me that'll get to me. Do you know what I mean? If you go into my comment sections, there's some real abuse in there, and my DMs are worse, but it really doesn't bother me at all. I show my mates and go, look at that. That's about it.
It's nearly more ammunition for your content, isn't it?
Exactly, I can turn around and go, people hate me for this, and if they didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to say that. You know? So thanks very much, guys, for the comments. Don't stop now that I've said that. Keep being nasty, please.
The more you hate me, the more you help me.
Yeah, exactly, There's no such thing as bad publicity, like.
Yeah, for sure. And that transition from homeschooling to systemized schooling must have been very difficult.
Do you know, it actually wasn't as bad as you'd expect. My mum was a good teacher. She actually did a really good job. I didn't feel that I was behind with any of the people in school. I didn't feel that I was, struggling with the curriculum, and maybe the opposite in some ways. I felt like I was a little bit ahead, which was great. And
the social aspect, though?
The social aspect, I don't think that was ever going to be easy for me. I've always been an unusual individual. Do you know what I mean? I think whether I'd been in school from day one or whether I joined then, I was going to be an unusual individual, and that's a hard thing to do in a rural town in Ireland. Like, it's very difficult to not get bullied for something. And I was out, like, I had long hair, I'd paint my nails and shit, like hanging around with unusual people, just stuff. I was almost going out of my way to not fit in. So I feel like I did that to myself. I'm grateful for it now. Gave me a good thick skin, but
almost as if you attracted them into your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Here I am, come at me.
Yeah, genuinely. I've always been like that, though.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about your mother. What about your father?
Well, unusual family situation. I'll say that. Unusual family situation. I have a father figure in my life. Fantastic man. Do you know what I mean? But, it's we're not biologically related, but he's a great guy, honestly. And he's been there for me hugely. Do you know what I mean? He's not going out with my mother or anything. He's just a father figure to me. Been there since day one. Fantastic guy.
Okay.
My biological father, I have no idea. Might see this and regret not hanging around.
What's that?
Might see this and regret not hanging around.
Yes. Might be following you on one of your social media channels.
I'd have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And so that's obviously had an impact.
In what?
In this father figure that you have right now.
Yeah.
He's been there since day one.
He has indeed, yeah.
And that to you has been your father?
Yeah, there's never been a space in my life for a father. Like, he filled it perfectly. Do you know what I mean?
Amazing. Yeah.
Great guy, yeah. First person to hold me when I was born, actually.
Unreal.
He was in the hospital with my mum. Great friends, the two of them. And he held me when I was born before my mum did. So you can't get much better than that. Do you know what I mean? And he's done everything he can for me throughout my life. He's been a fantastic guy to me, yeah.
So then, the reason I started bringing this up, and I feel that a lot of men who do struggle in their life today come from a background where a father was absent or potentially emotionally absent, physically absent, and there's something there that they've been trying to find or chase because of the disconnect that they had towards their own father in their earlier life. Did you feel that at all in your own past?
I suppose, as I said, I've an unusual family situation. So I wouldn't say it's a negative family situation. It's just unusual. So I suppose it didn't fit in with my idea of a perfect family when I was younger. But looking back, I had everything I wanted. Do you know what I mean? There's definitely, everybody could say that hard times, which I definitely did. But, I wouldn't drag my family life into the publicity anyway. But at the same time, I can't say anything. I can't say that I missed a father figure. There's been times in my life where I've thought that I would have liked guidance in certain things that I didn't get guidance in, but nothing that I could turn around and go, you did that to me. Do you know what I mean? It's just, we can't all have everything that we want.
Understand.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're not very wealthy. We're not well off at all. We've definitely been in I wouldn't say we're in horrendous poverty, but we're on the breadline. Do you know what I mean? You would consider us poor.
And then what's your take on masculinity then, in terms of men and this toxic masculinity label gets thrown on an awful lot?
Do you know what? I have some pretty extreme views, actually, funnily enough. But
let's hear them.
I suppose, yeah, of course. I suppose they're hard to articulate because I feel like it's very easy to misunderstand what I'm saying because maybe I don't have the right words, or maybe it's just a difficult topic to make sense of. I think there's a huge toxic masculinity. I think there's toxic people, genderless, they're just unpleasant output into the world. I think a huge part of that is hustle culture. I can't stand it. I really, really, really can't stand it. And I'd like to get the point across that everybody sees my content and go, oh, he hates money. He thinks everybody should throw away their cash. You need a house. You probably need a car. You need food. I fully understand that everybody needs a certain amount of money, but I think that your financial standing should be, are you hungry? No. Do you need a house? No. Do you have a car? You're doing great. Do you know what I mean? The idea that you have to be able to buy a €100,000 watch to be considered a man is insane to me. I've been sucked into that, and I nearly threw my life away trying to find it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to me. I don't understand. I mean, I do understand, to be honest, how we got here, but it's a horrible shame. I don't think you'll ever stop the world being like that. I think everybody will be materialistic. But I think toxic masculinity, to me, comes from that energy in different aspects of life. Do you know what I mean? There's, if you want to go to the gym to be healthy. I go to the gym for nearly 2 hours a day. I'm obsessed with the gym. I love it. I'm really into my fitness. But I don't use it as a weapon against people who don't. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you want to get healthy, it's a fantastic thing to do. If I could inspire you to go to the gym, that's fantastic. However, it doesn't make me more of a man. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make you less of a man because you can't bench 100 kilos. It just is what it is. And I feel like that's an issue in life now. I don't think it's necessarily easily solvable, but I think it's a huge problem. And I think it's something that young men get sucked into, where there are wholesome parts of masculinity. Finances, gym, everything. There are really, having a good bit of money is great. You can look after yourself and your family. Having a really good body and having a healthy life is fantastic. You can look after yourself and your family. Using it as a weapon to make yourself better than other people, unpleasant and unnecessary, And I think that people throw their lives away because there's pinnacles of masculinity that they fight to be like. And it does a lot of damage to people in general, I think.
The bullets of that weapon are shame. For sure,
yeah, definitely. And yeah, there's embarrassment, yeah. They're making you feel like you're not enough, and then offering you a solution to buy the sensation of feeling like you're enough. Mm-hmm. Going, hey, you're less than me. Mm-hmm. I could sell you a way of being the same. And that's just a fucking cycle that we're in. Very hard to get out of, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
We've been sucked into that sort of conditioning from early age, through advertisements on TV, through other people, through our parents' perception of what success means, and someone with the Mercedes means that I'm not good enough driving around in my Toyota, so I need to do more and feel more significant once I have these external accomplishments. I think it's driven by, I've spoken about this a few times, that the performance-based esteem that a lot of men get sucked into, that you're only as good as what's happening externally. And this provokes what you feel like you're lacking internally. But you need to flip that around.
You need to understand that they're not connected. You can be a very happy, successful man with almost no money. It's you might have to work a little bit at different things, but you can be a happy, successful person with very low finances. I consider myself very happy. I consider myself quite successful. I have hardly any money. Everybody always gets on my case about this because of my equipment. I have a jacket and I have a hat and stuff.
Your North Face jacket.
People always go on about that. Yeah, they always go mad for it. The jacket was 350 quid and it was a fantastic birthday present from my girlfriend. I didn't pay a cent for it. Yeah.
There you go.
So, but I'm very grateful that she bought me that. I wouldn't have bought it for myself probably. But yeah, I don't have a considerable amount of money. Like if my car breaks today, well, our car, I'll point out, it's her car, I drive it. But if the car breaks today, I'm not buying another one tomorrow. I'm going to go, well, I'll cycle for a bit. I don't know, So it's, I'm definitely not in a financially comfortable place by any means at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely not doing great financially. I consider myself very successful. I've done a lot of work on myself. I've gone from very unhealthy to quite healthy, gone from very depressed to not depressed at all. Done a lot of work on my anxiety. I have a good relationship with my girlfriend. I'm pretty successful in my eyes, like.
Talk to us about that journey of finding peace in your life.
Do you know, it sounds like an unusual thing to say, but a little bit of delusion helps. It does. If you can get to a point where you can go, look, this is a bit toxic and it's not great. I want to be over here. That's a long journey. If you can visualize the person that's over here and then you can pretend to be them, you'll close that gap quite easily, and then eventually you won't be pretending. I've said this in a few videos, like that you can, obviously don't go schizophrenic with the delusion, but a little bit is not that harmful, especially if it's used for the right reasons. If you can if you can tell yourself that you're that kind of person and begin acting like them and thinking like them, you can end up as the version of yourself you want to be. And it's something I definitely did. You know what I mean?
Are we talking about manifestation?
I suppose we are, yeah. I suppose we are. I kind of refrain from using the word manifestation because it comes along with, like anything, there's groups of people that will make it a toxic term and make it damaging. So if you can use the basic language, it gets across better without all of the ideologies that go with the language. So I usually just say a bit of delusion. But you're right, yeah, it's manifestation or whatever you want to call it, realistically. I made a video about that as well, actually. But yeah, just if you can believe that you are that person, I think you can become them. And if you can also keep in mind why you started. A lot of people say that, and they say you should always have positive reinforcement. I'm going for this because for positive reasons. I don't think there's any harm in looking back and going, well, if I fall back, it's also the worst thing ever. I can't let go of that. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of negative, being aware of where you're coming from. Don't lose sight of that, because it can't always be positive. You have to know there's something behind you chasing you a little bit.
You're moving forward, but that pit is
still there. Yeah.
A step behind or a couple of steps behind you. You could very easily fall back into it.
Of course, yeah.
Is that a fear?
It was for a long time, and it's one of those things where healing isn't a linear process. It's not just a graph that goes up. It's not, you know what I mean? There's a year of my life where I went, I've changed my whole life. Everything's fantastic. There's never going to be another problem again. I'm a whole new person. And then one bad day happens. I talk to the wrong person. I get reminded of the wrong thing. And I go, I could go back. Do you know what I mean? And I might spend a couple of days sort of toying with ideas and going, I could have a drink. I could have a smoke. What's the harm? I'm not addicted anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's not a big deal anymore. Maybe I could dabble. I don't have to do what I used to do. I could just have a little. I didn't do it. Very grateful for that. And then afterwards you look back and go, Jesus, was that close? But do you know what I mean? At the time it seems very friendly. And then afterwards you go, that was close. Like, do you know what I mean? And then I also get the feeling of, I've come this far. If I go a little bit back, I'm still not back there. I'm having a bad day. I could definitely just lean on some of the old habits just to get over this little hump. It'll be all right. That's a conversation I've had with myself a lot. And I hope I'll never have that conversation with myself again. But I thought that maybe a year ago, I definitely had a lull where I went, and then afterwards I went, that was close. So it can happen, It's one of those things where you have to be on your toes about it a lot. Be aware of your internal narration, for sure.
Yeah, the beats of the past are still...
They're there for sure,
yeah.
Yeah, you get stronger against them as time goes on, and they become less enticing as time goes on. But I think there's still definitely times, like even recently, so as I was saying to you earlier, I've been sober for... I'm trying to get the date right exactly. I've been 100% nothing in my life for just over 3 years. Just about 3 years, actually.
Well, tell us about what's nothing.
No alcohol, no cigarettes, no weed, no drugs, no caffeine. I limit my chocolate. If I might have a hot chocolate because I don't have caffeine, so I'll go to a coffee shop to go, do you want hot chocolate? I go, oh yeah, I'll have hot chocolate. I won't have two. That's too much stimulation for me. I can't. It's too much. So I to a large extent, I've just been as clean as you physically can be. Do you know what I mean? I've just completely cut everything out of my life. Very recent. I've always said to myself that at some point I might go back to certain things, naturals. Like I would never smoke anything again, but maybe I'd do edibles. And I'm not really interested in doing any kind of hardcore drugs, but I might try mushrooms again. I've done them before. I might do it again. They're great for your mental state. I actually have a lot of positive impact, even in the medical world. So I'd be all right with that. So very recently I did edibles, a very small amount. And definitely it's one of those things where nobody wants to call anything a gateway drug because it's definitely a triggering term. But I definitely did the edibles and then thought, a little drink wouldn't hurt. And it's a thought that crept in. I managed to fight it out, and I kind of knew it'd come, so I was aware of it and it wasn't a problem. Definitely a moment. Once you've bent the boundary even a little bit and you have those demons from the past, addiction is a loud voice, and it's really hard to hear the sensibleness when there's this idea of, I'm enjoying this. I felt a little bit down before this. This is good. More must be great. It used to be fantastic. And it's definitely something I heard in my head. I was aware enough to know what was happening. But I think a lot of people wouldn't be. I wouldn't have been 2 years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's something that you have to learn. I definitely am not in a headspace to do any stimulants, drugs, caffeine, anything in my life now. I tried that. It was fine. Not anti it. Maybe I'd do it again. Not in a place where I'm an advocate of it at any stage. Maybe in a couple of years I'll go, oh, that's great. That's an aspect of my life now. For now, I'm all right. You know, but everything else, alcohol, I've got a huge issue with. I've got a huge institutional issue with alcohol. It's one of those things that my friends who drink want me to shut up all the time because they'll have one pint and I'll go, are you sure about that? Mm-hmm. And I'm people who don't have a problem with it, people who are just casual drinkers. And honestly, I can see that that's, you know, it's not a damaging thing. I just come from a situation where, you know, I've been aware of the damages of alcohol around my life. I've seen it do things to people very close to me. I've also seen it change people, and I have an institutional issue with it. I'm kind of sitting there going, I have a moral issue with the companies even, never mind just the product. So I'm very anti-alcohol. So I can't imagine I'll ever take a sip of anything. I don't even like to do zero Heineken. I'll do it, but I'll feel bad about it because I'm buying into a company that I'm anti, you know. So
can we explore that a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, will I jump straight in and tell you why I've got the issue, or
yeah, just let's go right into the deep
right
end. So I've been sober as well for 3 years. Over
fantastic.
3 years. So,
did you have any problem with drink, or did you just decide to stop?
Well, in my early 20s, I would have used drink as an escapism from my own trauma, my own pain, and my early 20s were a fucking mess. I would have had I describe it as having a very aggressive approach towards alcohol, where not as if I was an alcoholic or drinking every single day to that extent, but when I started drinking, I drank to the point of destruction. Yeah. I said, I'm drinking, I don't give a fuck what happens to me. And every single morning after night before, blackout. So yeah, and that's gradually been reduced since my early 20s to my late 20s. And then 3 years ago, I said, look, this is just not serving my life anymore.
Well, look, congratulations, that's fantastic. Yeah. It's not easy either. It's one of those things,
definitely not in this country, yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. I'm sure you've experienced yourself when people go, I'd love to hang out with you, we'll go for a pint. And you go, I don't drink. And they go, I'm leaving. Yeah. You know, there's nothing. They don't want to talk to you at all. You know, and even nice people will turn around and go, oh yeah, no, listen, we'll go and have a cup of tea at some point instead. And then they just don't, because they go, we're going out on the weekend. These are the people that are coming. Throw your man a text. He doesn't drink. Don't text him. They're not even trying to be unpleasant. It's just the way things are set up. And unfortunately, you get left out a lot when you stop drinking. But yeah, look, I'll say anyway, my issue with alcohol is, to be concise about it, I think that it's over-normalized. Obviously, we all know that. It's over-leaned on. The idea of just, I'll go for a pint. Do you know what I mean? I don't see it any more damaging than most reasonable drugs, realistically. I mean, I won't put cannabis in there just because, you know, again, it's a medicinal thing, and a lot of people get angry with me when I say that it has negative downsides, which it does. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it does have downsides.
Mushrooms potentially being the exception?
I think that if you did them every day, if you did mushrooms as much as you drink, you got a problem. But if you do them once or twice a year to have an experience that you feel does something for your mental state, well, no problem with that. Or if you microdose it as if it's a medicine, look, don't take Xanax every day, but if you're heavily depressed and you need something for a week because one of your parents has just died, take Xanax. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things, like there's an appropriate application for everything, do you know? But I think the appropriate application for alcohol is way overshot by a considerable amount. And my issue with it is that if somebody is a raging alcoholic, now I can't speak for other countries, I know that here we have a reputation for the drink, but if somebody's a raging alcoholic, it's very common to go, Asher, he likes to drink. He has got a problem, he likes to drink. Do you know what I mean? If he was doing crack, you wouldn't say that. He likes a bit of crack. He's not an addict. He just loves a bit of crack. Like, you know, nobody said that. And I think that comparatively, there's a similar level of damage that if you're extremely drunk around your loved ones, children, family, people out in public, similar amount of damage as you do on a seriously heavy class A drug in the similar inebriation level. But obviously these drugs, demonized, terrible, as you know, in those levels they should be. I think everything should be legalized, but that's a whole other conversation. But if it's alcohol, that's fine. Somebody walk out of a pub absolutely plastered and go home to their kids, and do you know what I mean? They might not be beating their children. They're not a proficient parent in that state. And do you know what I mean? There's nobody goes, do you have a spouse? Are they at home? Are they sober? Do you have children? Like, that conversation doesn't happen. It allows a situation where families are ruined by a substance, and everybody, not only do they not stand in or intervene, they also go, it's normal. It's fine. What are you going to do? Tell him he can't have a pint? It's not a conversation you can have. And if you do have it, you're mental.
Yeah.
If you try and talk to people about this. And also, look, if somebody was doing really heavy drugs and then they went, I'm going to drive, you do anything to stop them. If somebody goes, I only live around the corner, it's the countryside. Your man's had 17 pints, but I reckon he can do it. Look, I don't know if you've been around rural Ireland much. I imagine you have, actually. You see that a lot. Since a young child, I saw adult men unable to walk get into Toyota Land Cruisers and send them on down the road, and nobody says anything. Nobody cares. They laugh about it if it's going to be anything until there's an accident, and then it's a whole different thing. But before that point, there's just a level of it's grand. It's drink. It doesn't matter.
Well, it became an accident because it was allowed to happen for such a long period of time until it became an accident.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody can deny that heavy alcohol use is negative to yourself and the people around you. Do you know what I mean? Whether you know them or not. But it's normalised. There's adverts on the TV. And again, I'll bring back the analogy. You see a Heineken advert. Imagine seeing that advert for MDMA. Even if it was legalised. Even if we lived in a country where, there's certain countries in the world where everything's legalised, and it seems to work really great for them. That's cool. But if you lived in a country where it was legalised and there was an advert going, Friday night, do a few lines, it'd be unacceptable, of course. But because it's alcohol, we just go, grand. Do you know? And again, I don't think that nobody should drink ever. I don't drink ever because I have an issue with it institutionally. As a substance, enjoy yourself responsibly. Which is the same thing I'd say if you were doing any other drug. If you want to do cocaine, fair enough. Enjoy yourself responsibly. Don't do it around your kids. Don't drive. Do it minimally. 1 weekend out of the fucking month. If that's what you want, it's not for me. If it's for you, fine. And I just think that there's an appropriate application for everything recreationally or medicinally. And I think that alcohol's just been way overshot in its application. And that's my issue with it. And so I've gone aggressively the other way because I think everything needs balance. Everybody's on this side. I'm just trying to stand over here and be loud as fuck. So there's a bit of balance where I'm going, look, alcohol, there's other options. Mm-hmm. Do something else. And it also leads into what I said before. You go to the pub with your mates. You get pushed into doing stuff because you want to feel like a man with your lads having pints, and you end up doing stuff that can have real implications. And it's unfortunate that the ego comes in always. And I think that alcohol's a huge issue in that conversation. And nobody says anything about it because it's alcohol. And so in every aspect, I think it's a problem.
The big problem at the moment with alcohol is it seems to be heavily linked to cocaine use.
Mm-hmm, for sure, yeah.
I work with a lot of men, and that's the struggle they have is not going to this. The struggle isn't initially going to the pub for a few pints on Saturday night, but it's what that brings. Yeah. And it's usually cocaine.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It seems to be all part
Shall
of
we get a bag is probably the most fucking said sentence after a few pints, like, do you know what I mean? And it's...
Which is becoming normalised as well.
Yeah, hugely, yeah. Which, 100%. And I think that the problem is that things become normalised, but they don't become legalised and conversational for everybody. It's still a little bit taboo. So it's cool. But it's not so taboo that you can't get it and you shouldn't do it. It's just taboo enough that you will do it and that it seems cool and that you're being kind of manly and a little bit of a lad for doing it. But it's still easily gettable, and nobody goes, oh my God, what are you doing? They go, well, that's just what you're doing. So there's this horrible balance of it's extremely desirable and secretive, very easy to get and very easy to abuse. And that's definitely an issue that needs to be talked about. Again, I talk about these issues. I don't have solutions to these problems. Do you know what I mean? I'm just an observer. I'm not going, everybody should do these things. I'm not telling people how to live their lives. I'm just trying to be a voice on the other side because I'm not aware of too many of them. Do you know?
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can't be a solution for others or for these corporations, but you have created solutions for yourself when it came to removing these addictions from your life, alcohol and all the rest of it. What was that process like for you? Where did that start and what was that road like?
So, my girlfriend got a car. We started doing a bit of traveling. I was already sort of enjoying the outdoors and nature, and I was already sort of cleaning up my life. Herself got a car. She got a license. As soon as she got the license, she went, let's drive up the Wild Atlantic Way. We'd never done it. And she was like, it'd be a nice thing to do. Let's do it. So we took 2 weeks. At the start of that, I had been thinking, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes for a little while. I'd already been kind of like, oh, I'm not going to drink. I'd taken a few months not drinking, dipped my toe into the idea of sobriety. I was still vaping. I'd still smoke a joint if it was going. I was still smoking cigarettes, and I was like, okay, let's do it. And the first morning we slept in the car and we were on the beach. Well, she was actually still asleep in the car and I was on the beach, and I think I had 2 Benson hedges with me in my pocket and my vape and all that sort of thing. And I just thought, that's it. It was a beautiful beach and I could see who I wanted to be. I was fat as hell at this stage. I was probably 23 stone, something like that. In kilos, I think I was like 132, whatever that works out at.
Oh. What do you know?
Right now, I'm 93 kilos, but the lowest I went was 79. I cut way down, and then I've just gained weight again, half deliberately and half because I love food.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm healthy, even if a bit chubby.
That's a fucking transformation in itself.
Yeah, it was wild. I'll share pictures of myself before at some point, actually,
yeah.
just show people, because I was massive, like, it was ridiculous. But I was really overweight, and I was like, I don't want to smoke. I want to change my life. I want to go to the gym. I used to really be serious about fighting sports. I was pretty serious about boxing and MMA. And I was like, I want to get back into that. I want to take everything seriously. And I just went, that's it. I'm just going to stop. And that's it. That was the moment. And I just never went back. That was it. It was like a shot at. Now, having said that, before that, I'd cut out alcohol. And before that, I'd cut out smoking joints. But it wasn't like I'm not going to do that. It was just, it doesn't suit me right now. I'm starting to feel like it's being a bit negative. And I started to fight those addictions because I was like, I don't want to do them all at the same time, freak myself out. Mm-hmm. So I'll take them staggered. And that's what I attempted to do. I was like, well, I'll just take a few days and I'll see how it goes. And that's kind of the process I was in. I'd been on and off sobriety for maybe a year. But then at that point I went, that is it. It's just changing now. That's over. And I never went back.
What's the sort of time frame then in terms of you getting caught up with the law and then making this decision to get sober?
Do you know, clean? What I might say might not be too accurate. I'll give you a go. See, I haven't really thought about these dates as much as they're just in my memory, as it were. And you're going back about 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that when I got in trouble with the law, I had already had times where I was like, I'm not going to smoke anymore. So I stopped smoking. Before that, I was like, it was around just before COVID kind of thing. I was like, I'm not going to smoke anymore. I haven't...
The good old days.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody else got absolutely wasted during COVID and I went completely sober for the whole thing. It's been before COVID since I touched anything, which is hilarious. But I'd stopped, and then it was kind of like once I'd gotten caught up with the law, it was another nail in the coffin of we're stopping, we're done. And then the trip when herself got the car and we went up the West Coast was after that by a good few months, I think. As far as it could have been a year, actually. It could have been as far as a year. But I suppose that was the definitive line where I say I've been sober since that point. There was definitely a transitional period for maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years before that, where I was getting to that point. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's something you can do overnight, because again, I'd wake up one day and I go, that's it, I want to change my life. And then I'd wake up the next day and go, fuck that, I want to go back to what I was doing. And then I go back and forth for... Mm-hmm. Took a long time to really swing one way or the other. But when I finally did, that's when I kind of draw the line of I've been who I am now since that moment.
Are you doing this on your own?
How do you mean?
Making these changes?
Yeah, no, I didn't have any help. Now, herself was never into drugs. She never really drank heavily either. She had, you couldn't even say she was a heavy drinker. She probably blacked out once in her life, and I think it was an accident. Do you know what I mean? She used to smoke weed, but she quit either before or around when I did. And she smoked cigarettes for a while after me and then quit vaping a few months ago. So, my journey and her journey have been separate. We helped each other, of course, but they've been separate. But other than that, yeah, it's been completely on my own. I've done the whole thing on my own. Everything the big things that I've really given up, I used to be mad for cocaine. I think everybody was at some point. I used to be mad for Ket. I used to be mad for MD. Those are my party drugs. But I was reliant emotionally and physically on prescription things like Xanax and Valium, and heavily reliant on weed. It's an addictive thing, emotionally at least. Without it, I was just a mess. And the drinking was a party thing for me. I wasn't drinking on a daily basis. I was blacking out on the weekends. Do you know what I mean? But the things that I've really, really had to kick would have been the weed, cigarettes, and prescription drugs, for sure, which were prescribed to me. I wasn't buying them, like, do you know what I mean? I mean, can't get enough from a doctor, but they were prescribed to me. I got pretty heavily addicted to them. A few times in my life I've been on and off those. But again, I've quit it all by myself anyway. The hardest one, cigarettes, honestly.
Wow.
which nobody ever wants to hear. Everybody wants to hear that it was cocaine or something.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest one to quit was, do you know what? It was joints, actually. Because they feel like cigarettes and there's tobacco in them because I always mix the two. And so I miss it. But it's the social element and the relaxation element that I miss so intensely. There's something about sitting down smoking a joint that heals the soul, but you can turn it into a negative thing. Once you've turned it into a negative thing, very hard to go back to it being a healthy thing. So I can't really do that. I also wouldn't smoke anyway. But unfortunately, there's a romanticness to it that I miss terribly, and the nicotine addiction's tied up into it in my head, which took me a long time to realize. I just thought I missed joints like crazy, and then I went, no, it's the nicotine that I'm definitely missing in those as well, because I never smoked blunts, you know. But yeah, it was the joints and the cigarettes have been the hardest thing. Yeah, for sure. I think the big thing is because you don't notice an improvement in your life. You quit smoking cigarettes, nobody goes, oh my God, you're sober, that's fantastic. It's just a thing you have to do by yourself because you know that it's the right thing to do. You know?
It's quite unusual that you've managed to do all that on your own, because often when somebody's in that situation of addictions and absolute chaos in their life, the first piece of advice is usually to go and talk to someone.
It is. And I think there's a few things. I definitely felt embarrassed about it, and the people around me were not on that side. Now, with my girlfriend, sure, me and my girlfriend have been together now for 10 years. So we don't listen to what each other has to say anymore, is all I can say. Like, when you're with somebody for that long, it's like having a fucking sibling, which is a weird thing to say, but it's the truth. When you're with somebody for that long, you feel...
True love.
Honestly, but you get so used to them. They'll say something and you go, I'm not listening to it just because you said it. Do you know what I mean? And so as much as she was a massive help and a pillar in my life, I have to say, she would turn around and go, you know, it's good what you're doing. And I go, is it? I don't believe you. Do you know what I mean? But then my mates at the time, my friends at the time, would definitely be the type that I'd be like, oh, do you want a fag? And I go, no, I quit smoking. And they go, just smell it. Just see how you feel about it. And they would push and push, especially with joints, people blowing smoke in your face, things like that. And they really do. And I think subconsciously they're doing it to try and drag you back. Consciously, they think they're being funny. But what they're actually doing is making your struggle 10 times harder.
Well, you're making them feel uncomfortable because, again,
No,
you're doing
not at
something
all,
that
yeah.
you're doing something that they are unable to do.
No, for sure. Because in the beginning, it definitely wasn't like that. Now I feel like I'm in a position where I did something great that other people couldn't do. At the beginning, I was embarrassed. I was like, I can't smoke like the rest of you can because I've got a problem and I've now got to deal with that. And there was this humiliation of, I can't do what you're doing. And I felt left out. And I felt, there was a voice in the back of my head telling me I was doing the right thing. But I felt very alone in the whole thing. I felt very left out. I felt very excluded from groups. I still do to this day. Do you know what I mean? I definitely feel like a lot of the friends that I would like to still have, I don't have because I'm sober. For sure. I'm 100% sure of that. And I don't think they're being nasty. I think I'm just unentertaining to them because I'm sober.
That's
honestly.
almost the hardest part of change, isn't it? The loneliness.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
The void, as I call it, that you step into when you're separating yourself from the life that you want to leave, and then the people tied up in that life, and then you step into this emptiness.
That you don't know, you're alone in it. You've never been there either. It's new.
Yeah.
It's something you've got to learn. And for sure, a void is a great term. And it's definitely true because you're doing it alone, of course, but you're doing it more alone because they don't like that you're doing it. And they're your mates. You could speak to a therapist. I personally didn't. You could speak to a therapist. You could speak to an addiction counselor. You could do things like that, but they're not your friends. They're trying to help you, and that's great, and they do a fantastic job, but they're not your friends. Internally, you don't instinctually trust everything they have to say because they're not your mates. They're not your family. Do you know what I mean? So being surrounded by people that haven't changed definitely causes a situation where it feels like you're doing the wrong thing. Definitely, like the narrative for me, I'm lucky that I have an internal voice that had my best interests at heart and fought for it. But I definitely felt like I was doing the wrong thing. People were looking at me going, you're wrong for getting sober. This is the wrong thing to do. You're boring. We're not going to hang around with you. You're not having a good time. You're going down the wrong path, which I think is a huge thing with weed and alcohol, because weed, fantastic substance, has great applications, can be really good for people's mental health, can be really good for their physical health. It's just unfortunately corrupted, realistically, in the world, the same as any substance that people abuse. But it means that whenever I turn around and I go, well, it has negative impacts, they turn around to me and go, no, it doesn't. What are you talking about? And I go, well, it does. And then they have this real, like, it's almost like you're politically disagreeing with them. It's like you're aggressively right wing and they're fighting you on it. because you just can recognize there's some issues with abusing a substance regardless of what it is. So I turn around and go, look, I've quit smoking weed because it was bad for me. And they go, weed isn't bad for anybody. It's not addictive. It's perfect. And you're an idiot. And that's genuinely the kickback that you get when you quit smoking weed.
Well, it's defensive on their behalf.
100%.
Defending their ego.
Defending their ego, defending their political standing. For sure, there is a political standing about being somebody who's pro-cannabis and somebody who is against cannabis on a medicinal and legalization level. If you then have a problem with, I used to abuse it and now I'm trying not to abuse it because I was throwing my life away to a substance no matter what it is, they don't hear that. They hear the political argument around it. They go, you're over here, you think it should be illegal, you think kids should not be treated with it when they have cancer. That's what they hear. And people fight back. They argue like hell. And that's the people that are nice and cognitive and have the right interest at heart. The unpleasant people that are around you will just turn around and go, well, you're gay. That's the honest answer. They turn around and go, I hate you now. And I go, well, that's a strong reaction. And they go, fuck you. That's just the vibe, you know? So it's a hard thing to do. And doing it alone is hard at the beginning. Glad I did it now. Do you know? Much stronger for it. You can't knock me from my path these days, do you know?
Is the loneliness aspect still something that creeps up?
Not these days now. Took a long time. Took a long time for a bunch of reasons. Because people often turn around and go, well, do you want to come smoke a joint? And if you don't go, they don't hang out with you. But it works the other way too. I don't know how to ask somebody to hang out. I don't know how to turn around to another grown man that I would like to be friends with, which is an embarrassing sentence by itself when you're, I mean, now not so much, but back then I was like, do you want to hang out? It's a weird sentence. It felt
go to the
weird.
Forest together, yeah.
It's a weird thing to say, like, and so I turn around to people and I go, we should do something. And they go, what do you want to do? And I go, and you don't know what to say because you want to turn around and go, we'll smoke a joint, but you're sober, so you can't say it. And then I have to have sympathy for the people that don't hang around with me because I'm sober, because I don't know what to say either, because it's so wrapped up in our habits and our behaviors that we don't know how to communicate without it. Now, even if it's not smoke a joint, now most of the people that hang around with, foresty people, outdoorsy people, they smoke a lot of weed, and if they don't smoke weed, they drink. That's what you do. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Even amongst my own community of outdoorsy people, they go, yeah, we'll go for a hike and then we'll go pub, and I go, I won't go pub, and they go, you don't get to go hike, and I'm like, that's a weird narrative, but it's definitely something I've encountered for sure. Yeah, unfortunately. But now I have friends that I just organically found other people in the world. Do you know what I mean? I'm very close with a friend of mine that I've been with since I was like 14. He's, you know, like a brother to me, very, very, very close. And obviously my girlfriend, and then I have just a couple of mates that I'm really close with. I'm very grateful for that. Didn't have that in the beginning, for sure. Also, I just wasn't talking to the guy that I just said I'd known since I was 14. He kind of separated himself from me because I had become quite a unsettling person to be around. And he definitely went, that's a little scary to me. I don't want to be around that. So no fault of his own. He definitely separated himself from me when I was in the pits of being who I was. So when I decided to make the change, it took a while for us to reconnect fully because there'd definitely been a period of time where we didn't mesh personality-wise. He's a very, very calm, very peaceful guy, you know.
That's the guy you were hanging out in the forest with last week, sleeping in a hammock?
No, that's a guy called Bo. He's an American. He's a really good friend of mine. He's over for college. He lives here. He's somebody I've only really started hanging around with in the past year. But yeah, great friend of mine. He's also really into the outdoors, and he's not 100% sober, but he's not a heavy drinker. He doesn't do any drugs. So it's easy. Do you know what I mean? And he gets on with my girlfriend as well. So it's easy for the three of us to spend time together without anybody bickering and arguing, because I've definitely had friends in the past that she doesn't get on with, so it makes it difficult, you know.
Yeah. So if somebody's in that void at the moment, which you've been in, I've been in as well, how can they navigate themselves out of that void and find potentially new connections in their life based on what you've experienced?
Do you know, I think trying to force connections because you're like, I want friends. I'm going to go out tomorrow and I'm going to make friends. You can make superficial friends that way, but I don't think you'll fill that void with those friends. I'm not saying somebody shouldn't do that because you don't know who you'll meet. You might meet somebody you have a connection with. I'm just saying that it's one of those things where trying to fill the loneliness with other people, it's doable. I didn't find it worked for me. I filled the loneliness with definitely a sense of delusion, for sure. I think it really helped. So I started going to the gym. and I was really overweight. So I had the motivation. I was like, I want to lose the weight. I want to bench 100 kilos. I want to deadlift 300 kilos. I was like, in my head, I was like, those are the numbers. I want them. So going to the gym, you meet people in the gym. You have common interests. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So that's definitely something that I would say is go for the activities and meet the people through the activities, because then you'll have activities to do together as well, which is fantastic. And the other big thing is, if you can, I'd almost say if you're at a time right now where you're smoking joints and you're drinking and you're not in a great position and you don't know what to do with yourself and you have all these habits with all these shit people, and you want to change your life, don't suddenly go, right, I'm going to quit all these habits. Fill your life with different habits, so there's no space for those shit habits left. Now, it's something that I only kind of caught on to as I'd already started transitioning through. I didn't imply it in the start of the journey, but it's definitely something that I think is a really good option. Where, like, if you're going out with your mates and that kind of thing, keep doing it, sure, but just join a jiu-jitsu club, just because you're going to realize if you enjoy the jiu-jitsu, smoking and drinking is not going to help, and you're going to be shit at jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I mean? And you're going to meet people there that are really good at it, and you're going to talk to them, and then you're going to realize their lifestyles are a lot different to yours, and you will want to improve yourself, not for just the sake of improvement. You'll have a goal and a reason, and I think that's a huge thing. Is a goal that's unrelated. Like, you've heard that thing: the man who loves walking will walk a lot further than the man who loves the destination. Find something that you love for the walking part. Just find, and then that will really, really spur you along. You'll meet other people, and you'll also, the more that grows in your life, there will be reduced space for the negative things, and eventually they'll organically just get pushed away. And a lot of people will hate you for changing, and they'll leave, and that's a good thing. Let them go. They're not good for you, do you know? So I think definitely improving your habits and letting them just fill your life is a huge thing, massively.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice, man. And yeah, I've found in myself that loneliness is not cured by human connection, but it's cured by connection with yourself.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then that is connected to values in your life.
Oh, for sure.
And understanding that you no longer value this life that you live right now, or the habits in that life are no longer your values, and you start to create new values like jiu-jitsu or gym or health or fitness or growth or progress. So then you start to transition this direction, and you know that deep down inside this is the right thing, because you've connected with yourself deep down. So that, again, that's been, I can look back in hindsight and identify that that's the journey I've been on. I had to connect with myself first, and then I can connect with others. Yeah. And it sort of went that way for me.
If you feel loneliness with other people, they're going to have to go home at some point. If you can become somebody you like spending time with, you don't feel lonely in your own company, it's like a superpower. Honestly, yeah. Genuinely, it's fantastic, and it's takes a long time. Took a long time for me.
You purposely go to the forest and spend time on your own quite quickly.
Yeah, hated it at the start. Hated it at the start, and that's the really weird thing. Is I love going to the forest. I love being outdoorsy. I love being outside. It's what makes me happy. It brings me joy. Doing it on my own, I'd spend about an hour, and I'd go, I'm bored now. I want to spend time with other people, because I was so used to all these stimulants and all these people and all this chaos in my life. And it took a long time of me sitting and just forcing myself to be at peace, almost out of spite, that it eventually turns into a real, genuine, honest thing. And what I was saying about delusion as well is, if you can convince yourself that you're, like, if you can play on your ego, I'm not saying ego is a good thing. It's definitely not in a lot of ways. But if your ego can be strong enough to make you ruin your life, which it was for me, it can be strong enough to make you fix your life. So at some point during my journey, I definitely had a wave that I knew was toxic at the time, but definitely allowed it to stay, which was, I was like, I'm better than these people. I totally am. And then I felt the thoughts coming, and I was like, that's not nice, but it's useful right now. So I let it be. Like, I was like, I'm, instead of being like, oh, I can't do these things because I need to get sober, being like, idiots doing these things. Because it was a really easy way of me allowing, even if it was a toxic wave, it was a way of getting over some humps. Because I definitely saw it as there's a process that you have to go through that's going to be the process for the rest of your life. There are definitely some humps in that process that if you can find a way of getting over them, doesn't matter how you get over them, just get over them. And once you're over them, you won't have to do it again. And maybe that's not true for everybody, but it was for me. And I definitely used things like a bit of delusion, a bit of toxic sense of self to get over those waves, which I think a lot of people would steer you away from. But as long as you don't let it consume you, it helps.
Brilliant.
It does, yeah.
What's next for you?
For my life or my socials? I suppose they're the same. Yeah,
Both,
they're pretty tied. Yeah. Honestly, at the moment, I have no plans to do anything dramatic because I love my life. Do you know what I mean? I'm 27 now. It's 27 is definitely the best it's been. I hated right the way up until 25. Last 2 years have been reaping the rewards of all the work I did the couple of years beforehand to get sober, to get healthy, to get somewhere in my head where I felt okay. And now I feel like I'm enjoying that. I feel like I'm loving 27. I'm traveling, sleeping in the car, climbing mountains, swimming, anything I can do, just getting myself out into nature and just having the opportunity to affirm to myself the things I believe are true by saying them to a camera and allowing myself to tell those stories to other people and seeing it help other people just makes it better for me, honestly. It's my social media is gaining momentum, but even more than that, my life's gaining momentum for me being just happy in it. I just feel good in the space that I'm in my own head and everything, which is a first for me. So there might be another huge patch of growth. For now, I'm kind of enjoying being in the garden of what I built, which is, it's amazing. I love it. And it's also why I took the opportunity to talk to other people, because I kind of was fighting and then I got to a platform, got a chance to relax, and then kind of turned around and went, the rest of you want to come up that hill? I've got some stuff that might help. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll see, I suppose. See what 30
brilliant.
feels like.
Yeah, amazing, man. It's as if the momentum in your personal life is now, well, has always perhaps filtered over to the momentum on social media.
Yeah,
and
yeah, for sure.
Because it's coming from you.
Yeah, it's. I didn't intend to get the momentum that I've got. I don't think that's something you can't sort of equate for, but it's definitely something where I was really hoping that the right people would hear it. And from the reaction I've gotten, like people send me messages quite often saying, look, I'm really grateful for what you're putting out there. And, you know, a lot of them I don't reply to because I have ADHD and I'm terrible at talking to people and I'm just out in a forest by myself. You know, I'm not a therapist, but at the same time, I appreciate every single one of those messages and every single one of them makes me really excited to do it again the day after. And it's definitely the most gratifying thing because it feels like what happened to me didn't happen in vain. Do you know what I mean? Mm. It feels like it was for a purpose and I can be grateful for it, honestly. You know, I've told myself I was grateful for my experiences, but only recently have I realized that I really am genuinely great. I wouldn't change them, you know? And that's an amazing feeling, for sure.
That whole persona or this new journey you're on as well can potentially become chaotic and addictive.
For sure.
Social media is incredibly addictive.
It is, yeah.
When you potentially become famous in your own way, or you gain traction and you're getting a lot of validation and praise and credit and, you know, all these positive messages coming your way, that can become addictive.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Are you managing that?
I suppose I try not to consume too much social media. I made that decision before I started posting. Well, I mean, I've been posting for ages, but posting the content I'm posting right now is definitely, I made that decision beforehand. And also, in kind of an organic way, I spend a lot of time in forests. There's no connection out there. I'm just forced to be away from it for a large part of my day because it's just no 4G. So, which is really helpful, really useful. I definitely find myself, like, I'm not immune to doom scrolling. You know what I mean? Like, if I go and I'll reply to a few DMs or I'll post a video and then I'll just swipe back and I go, oh, what's a few of these? And I'll get stuck and I go, oh my God, it's happening immediately. But it definitely can become addictive. The feeling of people watching you. A video doesn't get enough views and you go, I've done it wrong. But the thing is, I, again, have had a really amazing thing happen to me, which is I first blew up on social media in a very small way for something completely different. I was making video edits before this. They blew up. I got really addicted to the views, as everybody does the first time it happens. And I went, oh my God, that's it. And then it just didn't work out. My own laziness, I lost interest. Social media just didn't really work out for me. It just was what it was. Took a crash, took that hit, learned the lesson that it's a fickle thing and it doesn't really matter. So when this started happening, I definitely had a previous experience of not getting caught up on the numbers. So now it doesn't bother me. If I post a video, I've often found that if I post videos that internally I really enjoyed making, really enjoyed saying and really want to put out there, they'll be the worst performing videos. And if it's something that I just had a moment where I just wanted to say something and it was just important to me at the minute and I threw it out there, but I don't really care about it that much, they do great. It's really funny. But it means that I've detached myself completely. I mean, if it came to a point where I was no longer receiving positive DMs and I was no longer receiving positive feedback, I'd go, I'm not giving people something they want anymore, not for my own fame, but I'm just not serving people anything that helps them anymore. So maybe I'd think about changing it then. But if it's just numbers, but people seem to be getting helped by the things I'm saying, unaffected, which I'm very grateful for. I think it also, I'm not getting money off it. If it was my livelihood, if I was making cash off it, I'd probably be much more invested in the numbers. But because I'm not, it's just something I do for fun and get a lot of satisfaction from, because I'm helping people. So I'm not too tied to it, which is great for me.
Are you careful not to make it a completely monetary thing in your life because of the potential traps that could represent?
Yeah,
because you could, I wouldn't say easily, but you could certainly transfer over to YouTube, I'm trying to, yeah. Can be paid.
Yeah,
and again, are you apprehensive about that?
Yeah, actually, I am. I am apprehensive about it. In a weird way. One of them being, I am afraid of getting tied to it in a responsibility way. For now, it's extremely organic. It's extremely honest. I'm just enjoying telling people things that are my experiences, and I'm loving their response. If it turns into I'm getting money from it, I would hope that it wouldn't affect me too much, because I don't have a lot of money now. I'm kind of okay. I'm not hungry. I'm not homeless. So I'm having a good time. So as long as it doesn't become the line between me and like starving, do you know what I mean? I don't think I get too tied to it, but I am definitely, it's going to sound really strange, I take a certain amount of pride in just getting by somehow. It's a very unusual thing to say. It's like being in survival mode somehow, but in a really pleasant way. It's like having an abundance would be great. I'm sure it would. I've had an abundance before, didn't appreciate it because of the life I was in. But if I had an abundance now, I'm sure, look, there's a lot of things. I'd buy a van. I'd live in a van, realistically. If you gave me 10 grand, I'd buy a Mercedes Sprinter. Do you know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. But I enjoy sleeping in the car. I enjoy eating a dry pot noodle at the beach. I love the vibe of it. And the money would make things very easy, and that would be great. In a weird way, I enjoy just getting by, and it also validates the things that I'm saying to people. I'm going, look, you don't need an excess of money to enjoy yourself. If I get an excess of money, that's still true. I've still lived through it. I still know that. Do you know what I mean? And the excess of money will, I mean, right now I'm 27. Maybe when I'm 40, I'll want to like, do you know, maybe not a house, but like, do you know, I can see that there are some downfalls to having no money. I kind of enjoy it not being an aspect of my life that's so nail-biting right now. I'm not saying that's going to last forever. The only thing I'll never back down from is being financially stable. I'm sure is beautiful. Being rich is trading your happiness in life for something that you don't need, you just want. And I'll never back down from that. But look, I'd love to buy a van. I can't buy a van. If I had the money to buy a van, that would be beautiful. I'm not going to buy a gold watch. Do you know what I mean? And I just...
You don't value it?
Don't value it. And I also have valued it. As in, like, I remember I had a load of gold chains. I wear one that my mum bought me now. That's all I wear now. But I used to have like a load, like big, thick gold chains. And before I got them, I had this thing that it was going to fix it. I don't know what it was. It was going to fill the void. It was going to sort it out. Didn't, obviously. I wanted a gold watch. Bought a gold watch. Didn't do anything for it. I wanted gold rings. Did nothing. I wanted a Gucci tracksuit. Got one. Did nothing. It had no impact. It did nothing. And if I never had those things, I bet in the back of my mind, I'd still think they'd help. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Now, I've never had the amount of money. I couldn't have gone out and bought a Mercedes. I couldn't have gone out and bought a house. But I had enough money to just go, I couldn't have that before. I know a lot of people who can't have it. I can have it. And by getting it, I was like, this is going to fix something. And it did nothing. And I think that's a lesson that I'd like to be able to tell people that and go, listen, it's not going to help. I don't think it'll listen to me. I wouldn't have listened to you. But because I've done it, I now am aware of what would help. I would like money to be able to buy things that allow me experiences. I have no interest in buying things where their only value is to own them. And that's pretty much where I draw the line. And I also novelly kind of enjoy just getting by. I don't know what it is. There's the idea of a fox running around stealing things out of bins. It's an aesthetic I enjoy. And I the funny thing is I'm sure it's not sustainable, and I'm sure something will change in my life. But for right now, completely separate to my argument against wealth. I also just enjoy being a bit of a, like, dry pot noodles out of the back of it. I enjoy it. I enjoy it, you know? And I'd like to make sure that everybody realizes that that's separate to my arguments against vast wealth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a great benefit in being somewhat secure. I'm not somewhat secure. I'm sure there is a great benefit in that. Past that, I think, is no longer a benefit. I think there is a point of diminishing returns. But yeah, maybe in the future I will try and monetize some of the stuff that I'm doing, but I want to make sure that I'm never monetizing something that I don't feel that I'm giving as much as I'm getting. I've often thought that I might start, I don't know, I thought about doing it on OnlyFans just because I thought it'd be funny, but like a Patreon kind of thing with like content where I could talk to people personally and talk to them about their problems, that kind of thing. I would only ever do that if I felt that I was giving people something I can't give them on my Instagram. Like if you send me a DM, I might see it. I probably will see it, but I don't know anything about you. I'm not going to ask you about your life. I'm reluctant to give out advice that I think is too in depth because I don't know you. I could do more damage than good. I have no idea who I'm talking to. Like I could say something there that sends you on the wrong path completely. If I could have a half an hour conversation with you, that might be different. I'm not a therapist, but I can just tell you my own experiences. Maybe you can relate some of them to yourself, but that's a dangerous thing to do to somebody you don't know. So if I got to a point where I had, like something like just OnlyFans because I thought it'd be funny, or maybe Patreon, I don't know what platform. I haven't really gone down the route of deciding yet. But in the future, get to a point where like, if there was, a paywall for you to be able to speak to me in depth, it would do two really good things. It would give me a bit of financial security out of it, which I would obviously love. It would also create a filter so that I didn't get hundreds of thousands of people talking to me at the same time. Because there's been a few times I've put it on my story and gone, ask me a question, and some of the DMs I receive, they're way too emotionally deep for me to deal with in that for myself and for you. That's a conversation that you don't want me to have with you right now. You might think you do, but the things I'm going to say to you are not going to help you. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. It's not going to help. And it's too many. I don't have the time in the day for my own growth and to try and share that. I don't have time to do that with each person that's in my DMs. But if I had a Patreon where, it was a certain amount of money where I felt like I was, it took the time for me to do it. I felt like I was getting something out of it. And it also slowed down the amount of people that asked me so that I could go, right, well, if you've paid however much, I don't know, like a $5 or a $10 or whatever to talk to me, you clearly really need to talk to me. So I'm really happy to give you that time. If you've taken the time to pay for it, I now believe that what you're saying is sincere, and I'm really happy to help you. And it also would just give me an opportunity to like, look, because I believe that you really need this help, I'm happy to have this 4 to 5 minute conversation with you, or just even a few texts back and forth. So maybe if you turn around to me and go, look, I'm at this part of the journey, or I'm at the very beginning, or I'm at the very end, and I'm having a lack of, you had this experience, chances are I probably have. And I can probably talk to you about what that's like. And I can maybe try and talk you through that. I'm not a therapist, but I can maybe give you my experiences and help. If I can monetize it in that way, I will. But I don't want it to be a situation where, that's why I like Buy Me a Coffee. People kind of go, I'm not receiving anything for this. I appreciate what you're doing and I would like to give you something in return. And I really appreciate that. Listen, everybody needs a bit of money, but I don't want to feel like I'm monetizing on helping people in a needless way because it feels immoral, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, I definitely want to make sure there's if I do it, it'll be for a good reason. Or I feel like I can provide something that's really worth it for people. For sure.
Brilliant, man. I'm so looking forward to what's coming up for you.
Yeah, me too, actually, yeah.
Love where you're at the moment. And we spoke about void.
Uh-huh.
A void. I think there is a void at the moment in this country, specifically for men's mental health and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're stepping into that void and you're helping so many people, men and women. So thank you for that. And
appreciate it.
And yeah, for anyone who's not following you, where can they find you?
Caoilte is my first name. I always have to spell it because it's Caoilté McClean, but yeah, it's Caoilte. There's a lot of fake pages, but mine's the one with 400,000 followers. Thank you everybody that followed me.
Amazing.
It's pretty easy to locate which one I am. Yeah.
Brilliant. Go follow him.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah.
And thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a great experience, great conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.